Welcome to day number 1 of our knee replacement safe exercises course. I'm Dr. Ben. What we're going to start with is some really low-level, easy-to-accomplish exercises and movements, and as the week goes on, we're going to make things ever so slightly more challenging for you. But most of the time, we're going to be spending our time in a chair. So after you've had a knee replacement, for one thing, there are different kinds of knee replacements, so there's no way for us to know what kinds you've had and all the different kinds that are available out there. So we're going to make this exercise program general for a lot of people that have had knee replacements and similar type of things. But if ever you're in doubt that what we're doing isn't helping you, or what we're doing could be of risk for you, please stop and consult a healthcare provider. So the first thing that we're going to do is going to be ankle pumps. And I know that this is a knee course, but the reason that we start with ankle pumps is it will actually use all the muscles that are below our knee to help pump swelling and blood back up past our knee. So that's really important. A lot of the time after we get a knee replacement, blood flow will change quite aggressively, especially in the first few months afterwards. So what we're going to do is ankle pumps purely because it's going to use our muscles to pump some of the blood from our lower limbs up past our knee again. So all I want you to do is sit in the middle or front of your chair, and you can put your leg either straight out in front of you if you want, or you can put it a little bit bent. But either way, all we're going to be doing is taking our toes, tapping down to the ground, and pulling straight back up towards our knee again. So for most people, as we're doing this, the important part is actually to go slow. It's not a matter just of the range of motion, it's a matter of us having control. So for one thing, it doesn't matter the speed, we're going to be pumping blood either way. But as we go along doing this, control is something that's going to help to translate over when we start walking and when we start putting more weight on that leg. So just keep going with me, keep pumping that foot for now. A lot of people will find that they fatigue in the front of their shin, which is entirely fine. That's a good place for us to exercise. So there's no magic number on this. Go until you feel like it's a little bit tired, and then we're going to switch and do the same thing on the other side. So you can just toes down and then straight up again. So some of you, like myself, might actually get some clicking or some popping in your ankles while doing this. It's entirely normal. As long as we don't get any pain from that clicking or popping, we don't worry about it. So if you ever want to give it a try, you're welcome to do both legs at once, but for a lot of people the balance is a little more difficult to do it that way, so generally we only do one leg at a time. But you can do that anytime you feel like you're starting to get a little bit of swelling in your lower legs, or feel like you could just use a change in the blood flow down there. The next thing that we're going to do is called tibial twists. So your tibia is your shin bone. It's this big thing here. So one of the things most people don't realize about their knees is that they don't just go straight front to back. Your knees actually have a little bit of twisting built into them as well. Now, after you've had a knee replacement, it might be variable just how much that is and just how difficult it is to control. But we're going to work on it a little bit because it helps us to get these tiny little movements of our knee a little bit well controlled. So we're going to be in a very similar position to before, only we're going to try to have our shin straight down and our foot directly underneath our knee. So for now, what we're going to do is we're going to put one toe on the ground and have a heel just ever so slightly lifted. And then all we're going to do is make a little bit of space, take our heel out to the side, and then bring our heel inside. So it's going to be a little bit like a windshield wiper back and forth here. So as you go, don't be surprised if your foot starts to drift away from you. If it starts to get too far away, simply pull right back underneath again. So in this kind of exercise, I don't want you to go very far. I don't want you to push to the end of your range of motion. I just want you to swivel your heel back and forth, side to side. And if you were to feel your knee, you'd feel the bones moving around in there. This is good and healthy for the knee. Okay, we're going to do the same thing on the other side. Going to have just our toe planted, lift our heel ever so slightly off the ground, then we're going to swivel a heel out to the side and a little bit in, just back and forth like windshield wipers. So these are what we call accessory movements of the knee, because the primary movement, or the big one, is it straightening and bending front to back. But these accessory movements are really important for the long-term health of the ligaments around your knee as well. Good. So after you've done that, we're going to switch back to the first leg, and we're going to do the same thing, only rather than having our toe on the ground, we're going to have just a heel on the ground. So you're going to put just your heel down directly underneath your knee, and you're going to swivel toes in and out. And it's going to be a very similar kind of movement around the knee. The difference being you're using a different set of muscles to do it because of the difference in how your foot is on the ground. And this will just help change a little bit about the way that your knee functions as far as the little muscles around it. And again, we don't want to go very far. Most people will go further to the outside than they do to the inside. That's entirely normal. Good. Okay, let's switch over. We're going to do the last one on the other side. Heel on the ground, toes up. They don't have to be far, but just as long as they're off the ground. And we're just going to swivel back and forth. Good. All right. We're done on that side. You can let your feet relax entirely. So for most people, they're probably going to be getting a little bit of discomfort or a little bit of burning on the front of both of their ankles and the front of their shins, maybe a little bit up to your knees. That's entirely normal. That's us using muscles that we don't usually use otherwise. This will really help for retraining how we walk and how we support ourselves on these legs. The next exercise we're going to do is called clamshells. So if you picture what a clam does when it opens up and closes, it simply does this back and forth. So what we're going to need is our band for this one. So I've got a loop here. If you have a loop, that's great. If you don't have a loop, but you have a band you can tie in a loop that's approximately that big, that would work as well. So when we've got our band, all we want to do is put one foot at a time through the band. That's usually the easiest. And then we're going to take the band and we're going to shimmy it up towards the top of our shins or just below the knees. So by the time we're here, we want it just below the kneecaps. It can be a little lower or a little higher. It's not the end of the world, just as long as it's not above the knees. And then we're going to sit towards the middle or front of our chair, have our feet underneath our knees, and then we're going to use the resistance of the band as resistance for our knees, and we're going to spread straight out like that and slowly let it back in again. So for this helps primarily our hips and the outside of our legs. One of the things this does is it helps to control where our pelvis goes and our balance when we're walking. So we're just going to be taking this and spreading out and slowly going back in. Let's do about 10 repetitions of that, starting now. Good. I think I've got a little more than 10 in there. And relax for a second. We're going to do one more set of these. So one thing a lot of people might not realize when it comes to knee replacements and knee health is that a huge part of what keeps your knees moving the way we like is whether or not your feet and ankles work well and whether or not your hips and low back work well. Because they tend to control, your hips and low back tends to control where your thigh goes, and your foot and ankle tend to control where your shin bone goes. Caught in the middle between your thigh and your shin bone, that's your knee. So we spend a lot of time, even though the knee replacement is what we want to focus on, we spend a lot of time making sure our hips and our ankles have really good control, because that allows us to have really good control of our whole lower limb and make sure our knees are nice and healthy and can exercise well. Let's do one more set of 10 repetitions of this, doing the exact same thing. Make sure that we're going under control. 10 more reps of clamshells, starting now. Good. We've got 10 done there. So let's do the opposite as before. We're going to shimmy this all the way down, and we're going to take one foot at a time out of this. Good. Our next exercise is going to be one of the more difficult ones that we tend to do every day or do throughout the week, and that's a straight leg raise. So this exercise is meant to work the quadriceps, which are the muscles on the front of your legs. So all we're going to be doing is you can sit towards the back or middle of your chair. It's entirely up to you. We're going to have a mostly straight leg. It doesn't have to be locked, but we're going to have it mostly straight. And then what we're going to do is try to straighten it entirely and lift it at the same time. So usually having the other leg either underneath you or in some way supported is going to be the easiest way to do this. So it's going to look like this. You're going to straighten and you're going to lift. So it doesn't have to go far. And a lot of people, especially if you've had sciatic problems or you have really tight hamstrings, it might not go far at all. It might barely lift off. But all we're going to be doing is trying to straighten and lift. It doesn't necessarily matter if you point your toe up or you point it across the room. You can let your foot do whatever you want. And don't be surprised if you might feel like you're going to cramp in here. If it feels like you have a cramp coming on in the front of your leg during doing this, just put it right back down and bend it underneath you again. Okay? So we're going to do 5 slow repetitions on one leg and then 5 slow repetitions on the other leg. Okay? Let's start that now. Make sure that it's slow on the way down as well, not just the way up. Good. We've got 5 on that leg. Take a little breath. We're going to make sure we're in a good position to be able to do the exact same thing on the other side. So I'm going to scoot a little further forward in my chair just to make it so I can straighten my leg a little easier. Same thing, we're going to do 5 reps where we straighten and then lift. Start that now. Good. All right, we've got 5 reps per leg in on that. That's enough for today. You should feel the top of your thighs where a lot of this work is happening. Depending on how long it is since you've had the knee replacement and depending on just how much rehab you did afterwards to try to get things back, you might have a hard time feeling the quadriceps on the side that you've done the knee replacement. So just know that that should come back over time, but for a lot of people, it's a lot harder to get the muscles to activate on the side that you've had the surgery. The last thing that we're going to do today is for the opposite side of our thighs. So instead of this, we're going to be working back here. This is called our hamstrings. So our hamstrings are a very important muscle when it comes to our ability to bend over and pick things up. So we're going to want to make sure that they're nice and strong, and they're very good to protect your knee as well. So for this, what we're going to need is something on the ground that can reduce friction so we can drag our heel towards us, because this exercise is called the heel drag. So what I've got, because I'm on a floor that's nice and slippery, is I've just got a cloth. So for me, I can put that on the ground, scoot towards the front of my chair, and I'm going to put my heel right in the middle of it, and I'm going to straighten all the way out. So from here, what we're going to be doing with a slight bend in our knee is we're going to be pressing our heel into the ground, and then keeping pressed into the ground, drag the whole way back, and then relax. Push it out again nice and easy. Lean, push into it, and drag the whole way back. And that's what we're going to do every single rep. So we're going to do 5 repetitions per leg on this. I want you to make sure it's slow and that you're really trying to push into the ground the whole time. You should be feeling the back of your knee and a little bit in the back of your thigh. Okay? Let's do 5 reps starting now. Good. We've got 5 in on one side, so let's switch right over, do the same thing on the other side. Let's do 5 more reps, starting now. The reason you see me leaning forward is it's a little easier to put some pressure into the floor that way. Just uses a little bit more muscle. Good. And that's it. We are done for day number 1. You might get a little bit sore from the first day. That's entirely normal, but we're going to make things very similar, just with a slight bit more challenge on day number 2. See you then.